Hello, everyone. Welcome to another one of our Poets Talk Politics sessions that we do here at the Comparative Literature Institute of the University of Porto. I just like to draw your attention to a few of the previous, and never mind the construction. I don't know. I'm not sure if you can hear it. There's a lot of noise in the apartment above me. So. But I'd like to draw your attention to the episodes of the show that we did that are not yet on YouTube. We did one with Vanessa Place last month that is not yet on YouTube, so that you can find the live stream is still on the Facebook page of the Instituto of the Comparative Literature Institute of the University of Porto. And then the one that's missing as well is the conversation we did with Vietnamese American poet Linh Dinh. She's also not there. We'll so keep your eyes peeled for that. And so today would like today I'm here by myself, which is actually an exception. It's usually I'm surrounded by like all these people that I just delegate responsibilities to. But very happy to have Felipe Cussen here today, and I'll just read the bio that he has on his faculty webpage. And then Felipe holds a PhD in the humanities from Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona. He is a professor at the Institute of Advanced Studies of the University of Santiago de Chile. His academic and creative research covers the relationship between literature, music, and the visual arts, experimental poetry, digital technologies, and these two are very quirky to me, like mysticism and pop. This is cool. He also regularly writes for the press by way of interviews, columns, and letters to the editor about television, film, music, and political news. And then I'm just going to go through the his latest releases in what poetry is concerned. All of this is, by the way, in his own webpage, available for free. So you're missing out if you don't visit. So there's The Joy of Rain, which came out in 2023. No Lo Vi Venir, which we're talking about today. At least that was the book that was advertised in the poster. Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover from 2022. Art, also from 2022. Self-Portrait, and a bunch of other projects, right? So there's a lot of stuff in Felipe's back catalog that you can have fun exploring. So welcome, Felipe. Felipe is gonna do a reading first, and then we'll chat, and then we'll have a back and forth. So,
well, thanks so much, Joao. And well, first of all, I'm very happy to be talking with all of you at, I don't know, Portugal, or wherever you might be hearing this reading and talk. And I was very happy to receive your invitation and saw that you have talked with lots of poets that I admire very much, and some of them I'm friends with, like Rolf Iterman, Charles Bernstein, people that have also been in Chile, and we have made some activities. So this is great. And I'm also very happy to keep in touch with lots of friends in Portugal, in Porto, Coimbra, Lisbon. So it's very happy to be in touch with what you're doing, what you're researching, and also have the chance to share some of my stuff. As you said, I have lots of different interests. That's a problem usually, because I have to mix and juggle with I don't know, my job at the university, which occupies a lot of my time, and I really love doing. I love researching, and I'm very lucky that I can research a lot of things that are related to my own creative work. So lots of time is very related. I research about experimental poetry, conceptual writing, sound poetry, electronic music, and it's the kind of things that I usually do by myself. I also research about mysticism, although I haven't have any mystical experience. So, yeah. Not for the moment, at least. But that is a part of my because my field of research is more broadly comparative literature. I'm happy to give this talk at the Comparative Literature Institute. And one of my main interests is to relate like the mystical experience during the Middle Ages or in different cultural traditions with contemporary art, contemporary poetry. So that is why I do that relationship more from an aesthetic, formal point of view. For me, the mystics are like experimental poets. I try to read them in that way. And also there's my interest in pop music. Especially I am very interested in electronic pop music, and I have had the chance to interview some of my favorite musicians, and that's a field in which I always want to be also. So when you ask me for my, I don't know, the political dimension of my work, it was very interesting, because if we have had this talk, I don't know, 5 years ago, my answers would have been very different. I have been always, since I was a kid, very interested in politics, like reading. I remember being a teenager and reading about politics and the newspapers and the magazines and all that. And also my political views have changed a lot during this time. But I was always very, I don't know, very preoccupied with not mixing too much my creative work and politics, like thinking of them in different tracks. I think this has to do with the tradition of political poetry in Chile, which is very important, and we have had these like great figures such as, I don't know, Pablo Neruda or Raúl Zurita, who have like this status of the poet as a prophet or as a guide in politics, which is it's great, of course. It's amazing, and it's great in the social social response they provoke. Like there are also some expectations about poets or artists in different times. So I think people like them like fulfill that role in a very good way. But I was totally far from that perspective, and if we talk about conceptual writing, some of my main interest in conceptual writing is precisely this idea of detaching your subjectivity or your individuality from what you write. I like very much, in fact, something that Rob Fitterman says. That, I don't remember like the exact quote, but as a poet, I'm interested in emotions or subjectivity, but it doesn't have to be mine. So for me, that is very clever, and I totally agree with that idea. So I was always like thinking of all this in very separated ways, and of course, I thought that some of my work before like 2019 could be considered as political, but not in an explicit way, but mostly in the procedures. I'm always very interested in procedures. It's something that I research a lot. Procedures like appropriation, but also like restrictions and all that, or using randomness, etc. So the first thing that I will show, it's part of a. I think that it has some or you could think of it as something political, but in a very different way of what I will show next. So let me share the screen. And this is a project called Trilogy, which is, of course, 3 books that deal with the relationship between movies and streaming, and the experience that we have, like seeing movies through platforms and in relationship with the internet, and in a contemporary world. So the first book of this is Explicit Content. It was published, well, the 3 of them were published by Gauss PDF, a very interesting publishing project in the United States. This was the first book that I published after like 7 years without publishing any proper poetry book. I did a lot of sound poetry and other kind of projects, but the first poetry book that I published since 2008 was this, and this was like my official debut in conceptual writing. Although I was working with appropriation since a lot of time, since the 90s, but this was when I started like considering myself also as someone that could participate in all that work. And also it was a period in which I was in touch with Rob, with Craig Dorking a lot, also people from England like Simon Morris and Information as Material, people that influenced me a lot in what I was thinking and interested in. So I will read a couple of pages and then explain the procedure. A man kisses a woman in a movie playing on TV. There is a rape scene. 2 men lie in a bed after sex. A man is seen naked when he's awoken, but his genitals are not shown at any point. Lots of cigarette smoking. A person slaps another person in the face. A massive space station ignites into an enormous shock wave, an explosion that kills all life forms on board. People are seen drowning, being crushed, jumping from great heights, freezing to death, and being electrocuted. A pile of bloody bodies is seen outside a building. The third scene is fairly frightening and intense. 4 uses of shit. There are also a dozen uses of hell and damn, and 3 or 4 uses of son of a bitch and bastard. 2 asses and 1 asshole. 3 uses of goddamn. The names Jesus and God are misused a number of times. A man grabs and forces a kiss on another man. 2 characters engage in a long fight to the death. Domestic violence may be intense for certain viewers. The story is very strong in terms of sentimental scenes and disaster violence. Characters drink wine or smoke in a couple of scenes. A man and woman have sex. They kiss passionately. Brief and no nudity. A middle-aged man has several fantasies about a teenage girl. Some female characters are wearing what some might call provocative dresses. There is a lot of sexual dialogue. 5 uses of shit, along with a half dozen of other profanities that include damn, hell, son of a bitch, goddamn, and Jesus. Oh my God is uttered over a dozen of times. Well, this project was born when I started consulting this website called IMDb, Internet Movie Database. Every time I wanted to see a movie or I wanted the information about a movie, I checked like the credits or some commentaries, but I also discovered there was this other section that was called parental advisory, whatever, in which the parents or people preoccupied with these things made comments like they were preoccupied that people read the commentaries before watching the movie, and making and like telling what was happening in relation to violence, sex, use of bad words, etc. Of course, it was very moralist, and of course, like every censorship, it was very I don't know, very precise and very like I don't know, morboso, you say in Spanish, like they, like you get the idea that people were excited searching for all the sexual scenes and things like that. So I took that material. I decided to choose like very famous movies, like Hollywood movies, and then I took the comments, and with the comments I made a selection and also erased any sign of a specific movie. So there is no specific sign of the name of a character, of a place, or something like that. For example, there's the movie Titanic or things like that. But I no, this was different, I think. Uh, because for other project I chose only movies that I hadn't seen, and in this case I guess I chose movies that I have seen, just random. And I haven't watched Titanic, so I I don't know. It's I have heard so much about it that it's like I have seen it before, but well, and then when I erased those parts, and I ordered it kind of randomly. So there are 30 pages, just like these two I read, and they are very randomly. The only specific kind of repetition is at the end. There's the description of some bad words, but the rest is like very random. And in this case, well, for me, it was very important to publish in the States and to produce this book in an American context, and not to translate it into Spanish, for example, but to publish it in at Gauss PDF, because for me it was a way of dealing with the morality and the political correctness of American people. So it was like throwing them away these absurd situations. It would be funny to do the same exercise nowadays, because there are maybe some other kinds of censorship that comes from a more politically correct view also, and not only from like a religious or point of view, but it's like the same problem. For me, I have always laughed a lot about this obsession of Americans for being so correct and not offending anyone. Well, I don't know. They have. It's funny. They have not problem throwing bombs to countries, but they are very polite with the language and all that. So it's kind of cynical also. So yeah, that was this project. The other parts of the project are the other book is this one. It's called Closed Caption, and in this case, I took the subtitles in English of movies that also were the subtitles were written also for people that couldn't hear. So there are descriptions also of the sounds that happen in the movie. For example, distant shouting, distant screaming. I don't know. Crowd shouting, crowd exclaiming, crowd clamoring, crowd cheering, etc. And again, I took the subtitles and I composed these like concrete poems, very repetitive poems. And the last one, and for me, this is like the most political of the three of them, is regional restrictions. And this is very simple. It's only the repetition of this sentence. This movie is not available in your country. Something that when you live in the third world, as me in Chile, a lot of times you can access a platform and search for a movie, and it says that it is not available, or also with the YouTube videos or some music, etc. So this was like this. We have the illusion that thanks to internet we can be in touch with all the world. Well, like right now, we are having this conversation through Zoom. But at the same time, there are restrictions. There are some things that you can have access to. So this was like the third part of the project. And also, I like to show like a little part of a video I did when I presented this book. And for that occasion, I wanted to like make it more excessive, this random order. So I prepared like a visual selection of those sentences, of those descriptions. Also, I used some of these computer voices to read some of the sentences, both of them in English, but I also read a translation of some parts of the book in Spanish, and everything mixed and very quick. So this is the idea.
Un hombre amenaza con romper el cuello de alguien. Un diálogo incluye referencias moderadas al sexo oral y la masturbación. Los hombres fuman cigarros. Un hombre de mediana edad y un adolescente se besan apasionadamente. Se quitan sus pantalones vaqueros y camisas, dejando al descubierto sus pechos. Se detienen antes de que ocurra cualquier otra cosa. Las escenas que involucran la homofobia son intensas y molestas. Un hombre es arrastrado dentro de una jaula y asesinado por un velociraptor. Él grita en agonía y pone una cara de dolor. El personaje principal tiene relaciones sexuales con dos mujeres. La escena es gráfica, muestra todo a excepción de la penetración, pero también avanza extremadamente rápido.
Etc. The idea is very chaotic, but yeah, this is kind of this idea of like putting everything together and mixing and throw it away in response. It was kind of that idea. So, well, maybe we can talk later about if we can consider this politic or not. It's not so evidently politic, but in my way, and it has to do a lot of like where I'm speaking from. I mean, it's a book. If you consider it a book that deals with being in a certain place, in a certain relationship with the mainstream of the production of movies and all that. So in that way, you can think of it as politic. But, well, as I was saying, during those years, in fact, I in 2015, 16, I made my first I wrote my first essay more directly to the relationship between politics and conceptual writing, which was very interesting for me, like this idea of conceptual writing as being something very cold and very, I don't know, very detached from subjectivity, as we said. This was just this idea which I was working with was just before all these polemics and problems with Kenneth Goldsmith and the reading of Michael Brown autopsy and all that autopsy. But I wrote an article comparing a beautiful book by Rob Fitterman, Holocaust Museum, which is an amazing book with only the captions of the photographs of the Holocaust Museum, and relating it with the poetry and some projects of a Chilean poet, that you should have invited him instead of me, because he's a really political poet, Carlos Soto Roman, an amazing poet, and he has this beautiful book which is called Chile Project, in which he takes the files from the CIA related to the Chilean coup and erases parts of it. So I started to thinking more deeply in that relation. But a couple of years later, there was this huge social upheaval here in Chile in October 2019. It was really, really intense. And I happened to live just 2 blocks from the place of all the protests. So for my everyday life also, it was really, really intense. We were having lots of problems just trying to get out or get in the building where we live with my wife. There were cops throwing bombs every time, people throwing stones, lots of noise. Well, it was like 3 or 4 months, like really, really intense and complex for the people. I mean, I was supporting it, of course. I went to some of the protests, but for everyday life, it was really, really complicated. And sometimes I just took videos of what was happening, mostly because, of course, the news showed a very different situation, and like the cops were the good guys and they were only defending people, but of course that was not the truth. And all of this stopped, obviously, with the pandemic. For the government, the pandemic was great in that sense because all the protests stopped immediately. And it was like 2 or 3 days just before the pandemic really started in Chile and we have to get in our houses. There was this huge protest right behind my house, and I took some pictures and videos of it. It was really, really intense, and also for me it was like really sad. I mean, I'm interested in politics, but I'm very peaceful. I love to see people. I hate to see people fight and insult, and it was like you see like the worst of people, like the worst side of everyone. So it was really, really intense, as I said. And I just took a couple of videos for it. And some months later, I was invited to participate in, I don't know which kind of political meeting, like this international meeting about, I don't know, climate change and things like that. And I was invited to send something in English, so that's why I thought about this to show it today. And I made this video with just a very little text, and also the images of what was happening that day. It's not a piece that I like very much, or at least to consider it as part of my creative output. It was like a response to something that I was asked, and I think I have never shown it after that. But when you asked me for it, it was, well, this might be the moment. So it's like 2 minutes, and it's more kind of a reflexive text in a way. So I will share those. It's called "I Can't, Perhaps You Can."
These images were taken from my window. There are some young people and children from my country playing a useless game. I would like to be able to translate their language and their expressions, but also the noises, the smell of tear gas, the pain in the eyes. I would like to extract a teaching, but I can't. A day later, the virus officially landed in our country, and a state of siege and curfew was decreed. Like the whole world, this neighborhood became quieter than ever. A sudden fear invaded us every time we look outside, while food delivery men cross the streets like zombies. I would like to extract a teaching, but I can't. During these strange months, the claim against inequality, abuse, and violence by the state were transferred to the screens of our cell phones. The authorities, for their part, were only concerned with comparing the figures between the different countries. Meanwhile, long and silent queues form in the streets of those waiting to collect their unemployment insurance, and some wild animals return from the edges of the city. I would like to extract a teaching, but I can't. In all this time, journalists, academics, and artists have rushed to offer their explanations for the successive crises that we are living. When I listen to them, I find everyone right. After a while, no. I would like to extract a teaching, but I can't. There is an image that has been repeated many times on the streets and on social media. It is a flag dyed in black, which Martin Gavins created a couple of years before all this began. Perhaps it was an anticipated duel for so many deaths. Or maybe it was that our country, like our planet, was already dead and we hadn't even known about it. I would like to extract a teaching, but I can't. Perhaps you can.
Well, so that was, I don't know, like a little essay, but it's funny because I'm not usually serious, but in this case I had to. Sometimes you have to be serious, you know. You can joke every time. And now finally to show a third project, like a more political project, I would like to talk about this book, No lo vi venir, which is the title of the book belongs to Sebastián Piñera, the president in that time, that he saw that he didn't see it coming, the social upheaval and the process and all that. Just 2 weeks before this huge explosion of everything, he said that Chile was like an oasis in Latin America. Like we were the most peaceful and, I don't know, economically sufficient country. Like we were having the great time, and then it happened. But I used this title also because I didn't see it coming as well. I mean, I knew about all the causes and the economical difference between the rich and poor people, and of course I was aware of everything, but I didn't thought that it would explode like this, and what happened. So I wanted to also acknowledge that because as I said, like lots of people from the academy and political scientists, like they were giving answers of everything, and I was like, I really don't know what the hell is going on, and I wanted in a way to transmit that. But also, I have this, as you said at the beginning, I usually publish the letters in the newspapers, mostly in newspapers from the right, because there are no left-wing newspapers in Chile. So I mean, there are like electronic websites and all that, but and social media, of course, but like the two official newspapers that are still printed in paper are very from the right. But I want to publish my letters there. And I get published a lot with those letters. And of course, I mean, I'm sure it's because I'm like the quota of you have to publish some different opinions in that section. But well, I appreciate that opportunity, and I use it. And after a while, I collected some of those letters, also some of them that were not published. Also some, well, here's the description of the book. Some of them were, there are also some columns or little essays that I published, and also some interviews, because I was interviewed about this activity, this very strange activity of publishing letters to the editor nowadays. And there are some of them, for example, this one, which is a list of like asking the president to resign. Yeah, and there are also like very little letters. Here's the information of each one. And all this recollection goes from the beginning of the social upheaval to the plebiscite for a new constitution. That was like a good consequence of the social upheaval, that we decided to once and for all change the constitution that was written by Pinochet. And it has like 40 something years. Later, there was the election of a new president, which was won by a very young and left-wing President Gabriel Boric. But he was, in that election, he was fighting against a very extreme right candidate. So we were very, I don't know, happy when he won. Then there was the election for the people to write the new constitution, which was really, really turned to left, but absurdly turned to left. But that the problem with that was that the constitution that they wrote, which I really loved, and it was like a ambientalist, feminist, utopical constitution, but that was not approved by the people, and 62% of the people didn't approve that constitution. So there was a new process, and the people that were elected to write this new constitution are mostly from the extreme right. So we are really going from one extreme to the other. It's really strange. And now that constitution was read and it's awful. And the problem is that it is even worse as the constitution written by Pinochet. I mean, the constitution by Pinochet had a lot of reforms that made it a little better, but this new constitution is even worse. So now, and we are voting this on Sunday, so that is why it's quite intense at this moment. I will vote against this new constitution. So the paradox is that I will be happy if we keep the constitution by Pinochet. That is the awful situation that we're living. It's really strange and absurd. And well, there's a sentence I like very much, like, Chile is the worst country of Chile. And I think this gives the reason of that idea. So this is the context, and my book was written and published in September relating to this context. And there's a text I published as a letter in the newspaper, which is I love lists, as you can see. That was calling the people to approve the idea of a new constitution. That was the and that plebiscite was won by an 80%. So most of the people wanted a new constitution. So I made a list with synonyms of the word I approve. I will read a rough translation thanks to Google Translate. You can get the idea. I approve, support, adhere, admit, accept, adopt, affirm, confirm, corroborate, agree, consign, consent, consider, grant, favor, acknowledge, authorize, accredit, endorse, validate, reiterate, repeat, ratify, certify, authorize, legitimate, legalize, guarantee, endorse, allow, enable, protect, reinforce, guarantee, assure, propagate, consolidate, strengthen, endorse, sustain, maintain, commit, promise, ponder, commend, praise, acclaim, proclaim, manifest, congratulate, celebrate, applaud, cheer, glorify, consecrate, praise, exalt, elevate, certify, subscribe, sign, vote. That is the you get the idea. I like when you think of those definitions of poetry by Pound, like the poetry is the maximum concentration of sense in words. This is total opposite. This is like a dispersion of the sense. Like losing the power of the words, reiterating the same thing. So the thing that happened, well, this was published, as I said, in the newspaper. I will share it. Let me check it. Okay. This is the publication in the newspaper. Some people think that I publish these letters. That is fake, but every one of these letters have been actually published in the newspaper. And this same text was published in a couple of anthologies of poetry related to the political situation. But I was also invited by a wonderful group which is called Delight Lab, which is a duo of two brothers, Andrea Gana and Octavio Gana, that they project texts in public buildings. And they were really important during all this period of protest, because it was kind of a pacifical protest also, like just showing some image over a building. And they were invited to participate in this building, a beautiful building in the center of Santiago, and they asked me to provide a text. So this was just before this first plebiscite, and I prepared a version of the text for this building. So this is when we started working with it, but there was too much text, so we have to take some text out, some of the synonyms, and try to match with the form of the building, and then it started to get well. And this is like the official photo from a drone, and it looked really, really beautiful. Here you can have another look at it. So this was projected all over the building, and it was beautiful because also the people, the neighbors of that building started reading it aloud. So it was really a beautiful moment. I don't believe very much in collective poetry and all that. I don't know, but this was a moment in which it really worked, and I was really happy, and I learned a lot doing this project. Not also in that sense, but also in like I said to Octavio and Andrea, is in just we did it in, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes, like the display of the words and all that, and we were trying to match it. And I said, like, I had to put in work everything that I have studied about concrete poetry in these 30 minutes. It was like all those ideas of form and space and words and sound, whatever, like I have to put in action in this project. So it was really, really beautiful. And afterwards, this project had like a long life. We made different versions of it. We also printed like a vote in the form of a vote. I don't know. I made also a little video which I sent to an exhibition organized by the Georg Biedinger in Vienna, like with a drum machine and the words coming out like more like dancing. And for the second plebiscite, in which we had to approve this utopical and beautiful constitution that, as I said, was lost, I was contacted by a group which make like political but also humoristic videos and I don't know, different interventions in social media. So they asked me to use the text, and I was saying, I'm totally happy, please do whatever you like. So they took the text and put it in different orders. And we also invited Richie Tunacola, which is an electronic musician with which I work a lot, and we're very close friends. And he also made the the bass of the song, and they produced this video, which I will show. And maybe of everything that I have talked, this is like the pop side, you will see. As I said, this is only the text that I produce. This is a work also by Ricardo Luna and this group, which is called Interesante Material, like interesting material. So we'll see the video. Let's see here.
Apruebo. Apoyo. Adhiero.
Admito. Accedo.
Acepto.
Adopto.
Adopto.
Acojo.
Acojo.
Afirmo, confirmo, corroboro, convengo. Consigno, consiento, considero, concedo.
Favorezco. Reconozco. Autorizo. Acredito.
Avalo, abono, endoso. Valido, convalido, revalido, reitero. Repito, ratifico, certifico, faculto.
Legítimo. Garantizo.
Permito. Legalizo.
Legalizo.
Piso, posibilito, protejo, refuerzo. Afianzo, aseguro, apuntalo. Consolido, fortalezco, robusteco, respaldo. Sostengo, mantengo, comprometo, prometo. Pondero, encomio, elogio, aclamo. Proclamo, manifiesto, congratulo, celebro. Festejo, aplaudo, ovaciono, vitoreo. Ensalzo, enaltezco, encarezco, encumbro. Pongo por las nubes, doy por bueno. Doy la razón, doy fe, suscribo. Rubrico, firmo, voto, apruebo. Apruebo. Sí.
That's all. And just for a little conclusion of all this, I wrote a kind of visual essay with all these different versions of the I approve text for a journal at a university. And at the end of this, I said, well, with this new constitution they are proposing, I should start writing a new version of this same poem, but saying I reject, because now of course I will reject this proposal. And in fact, I just published a couple of weeks ago like the negative of this same poem with the reject the negatives to this new project. So it was very funny, like for me, like working in this something that was first a letter in the newspaper that was considered a poem by some other poets, that was projected, that became a video, that was going all over social media, and after that this pop song for me was really really great. Like, well, I mean, this is the kind of things that I study, like concrete poetry, transmedia or media translation, all that. So for me, it's really great to also be part of a huge project that have so much versions. I love talking about remixes, so this is just only one another remix of all this. So that's what I can say. I hope it wasn't too long.
Oh no, of course not. And I'm very grateful, because it's usually like the people I invite only read for 20 minutes or so, and so you did a lot of work already.
Yeah.
So I'm not on the spot as much, but no, thank you very much for all of that, and I hope people go like again to your page and check these things out like more attentively and at their leisure. But so I don't know, I like there's a lot to talk about, I feel, right? I'm also like, let me know, like we actually didn't discuss this. Let me know when you need to go, because otherwise we'll stay
No,
here.
I have to.
Oh,
Don't worry.
stay here forever and just keep talking about it.
Maybe I will have to go, and then I have to receive something, and maybe I have to go for like 30 seconds. But besides that, I can say.
Yeah, okay.
So don't worry.
We'll just make a poetic event out of this and just go on for like 24 hours, like a Warhol movie or whatever. No, I mean the one of the things that you said, and then that you say in the No Lo Vi Venir project, right, is this this idea. So you said during your reading that conceptual, yeah, it's a good place to start, like the fact that conceptual writing is normally not seen as political, right? And as you said, like what you said was that it's usually seen as very cold and precise, right? And you and in the Yo La Vi Venir project, there's one of the. Can you hear this crab? You can?
Sorry?
Well, I'll try to. Can you hear the noise from? No.
I think it's mixed with my own noise, because there's a lot of buses going on. So I think they're equal.
Yeah.
Equally noisy.
All right. Cool. So in the No Lo Vi Venir project, you at some point like attack this idea of poetry as being just empty idealism, right? It's just poetry as being like just romantic and and that's normally the idea that people kind of still have. I mean, even here, right? I mean, in the States too, I'm sure, right? Like if you read the New Yorker and the the Atlantic, that's where most people get their poetry from. And that's that's the sort of poetry that we have over here, right? That's the poetry that people read. Which is very, like, as you said, as you sort of, you don't say this, right? But you sort of imply that it's very, very idealistic, very romantic, vague, ambiguous, whatever, right? And then you contrast that with, poetry as the language of precision, right? It's something you say in the, you're sort of attacking some right-wing guy, I believe, right? And you're saying, why don't you just go out and read some poetry? You just really informed about what poetry is all about, right? And that's something that I think is true for avant-garde poetry in general. If you consider, I don't know, like Stein and Williams, Marianne Moore, that kind of tradition, right? Like those folks weren't kidding, right? And some of them were actually, I mean, Stein was a scientist, right? Trained as a scientist.
Yeah.
So, no, but yeah, I mean, to go back to conceptual writing in particular, like why the idea that I mean, and this is actually something that I think people are very, I mean, not even taking in the Kenneth Goldsmith and the Vanessa Place incidents into account, right? I think people in general have this idea that conceptual writing is actually, like a former professor of mine says, it's actually fascist poetry, because there's no opinion, right? You don't get it. You don't know what the author's take is on a particular subject, and that's sort of a problem, right? Because you're sort of hiding your hand. You're not saying what you think about like a particular subject. But what I mean, why don't we like talk about this this thing about poetry being precise and cold, and why is this a bad thing in people's mind, and why is it a good thing for you? And I think it's a good thing too, so maybe
You
talk.
know, I I have to write a text for next year, but it is an idea I have been working for a lot of time. I was asked to write something about concrete, but concrete, you could think the material, I mean the material for building houses, or it's an interdisciplinary project in which will participate. I don't know if engineers or architects, but also poets and all that. And in my case, of course, concrete means concrete poetry, which is one of my main influences and interests. And but for this little essay I have to talk, I want to draw a relationship between three of my main interests in life, which are concrete poetry, electronic music, and the Legos, this brick which you play, which was the game that I played all my life. When I was a kid, I was all day playing with Lego. And I remember, I don't know why, but when I was a child, like having discussions with other friends that they preferred to play the Playmobil with the figures. So for me, it was like a kind of intuition between figurative, kind of a figurative and narrative play as Playmobil with the figures, instead of Lego, which was more abstract and constructivist and all that. I think that was one of my main decisions in life. And I have kept that line later. And if you see like electronic music, kind of the electronic music that I like is like, I don't know, Kraftwerk or Def Punk, with this idea of the robots, and of course it's a joke and all that, but I like to very much that idea. So it's, for me, it's like kind of an aesthetic, which I have adopted since very long. That is why that video about the protests just below my house it's different. It's not the kind of thing I do most. Sometimes, of course, but it's like what I usually do is more like the first and the third projects that I showed. And well, my first poetry book that I published was very non-subjective. It is a book with very short poems about James Bond. So I was interested from that time in pop culture and movies and all that, because I love James Bond movies. I have watched them like 3 times each at least. And yeah, so it was very funny, but it now I understand it. But it's interesting that a first book of poetry is not about my feelings, but another people, a fictional character feelings. It was like so, a friend of mine said it's like a kind of a existentialist James Bond, because I have always been very preoccupied about James Bond's private life. His department where he lives is shown, I think, in just one movie, when he prepares coffee, something like that, but you never see like what he's actually thinking or feeling and all that. So it was like and that's the thing. For me, the pleasure that I have writing poetry or making music or whatever I do is like this same process of playing with bricks. And that is why it was for me so natural to work with appropriation. I was like, one of my first, for me, it's like a short story. I took a calendar of like a how do you say, self-help, autoayuda, self-help, like good nature sentences like, today you're gonna live I don't know, a great day, you will be in touch with the nature and all that. So it was like one sentence for each day, and I just took all those phrases and put it in a different order to create a narrative. And I did that when I was, I don't know, 22 or 23 in the 90s. So when concrete poetry, when I got in touch with concrete poetry at the end of the, I don't know, 2007, 2008, I was already working with that, working with quotes from other people, so all that. But for me, it was like an impulse, like, oh, this kind of thing I do is doing better and more interesting by other people. So that is why when I started studying it and also getting in touch with some of these guys and all that. So as I say, when I got in touch with with conceptual writing, I was already, I think, in that line of thinking, and more preoccupied about putting things together and creating sequences more than expressing my feelings. So, and I think, of course, I mean, it's obvious a poem or every text can provoke feelings in everyone. It's obvious, but I don't want to put that in front. It's just an idea. Or in the case of like more political things, I mean, in my letters to the newspapers, I give very strong opinions sometimes. Sometimes it's irony or ambiguity and all that, but sometimes I'm very straight. I mean, I give my opinion, but I don't want to use a poem for that. As I said, now it's more mixed. Some years ago, I was more like very different. But if it's something I consider as a poem, I don't want to use it only to express an opinion so narrow or so clear, or well, I can give that opinion. To say I approve, of course, it's an opinion and taking part in something, but it's more like a game. It's repetition of sense and all that. So it's not like I'm not giving arguments about that.
No, I mean, and kind of the way, like, for example, I see this project that you showed. I think I believe the one you showed first, right? Like explicit the
Explicit content.
trilogy project, right? The explicit content. I see it very much in line with, you know, what Rob Fitterman is doing, let's say in Sprawl, right? Like, in which is like just, you know, just appropriating and relaying like what people say about, you know, shopping mall stores and like the kind of like everyday boring, you know, not super insightful things that people have to say about stuff, right? And that's and the way, I mean, the reason why I was sort of picking on the like the precision element of like conceptual writing is that I do think that, for example, I mean, again, like what you're doing in explicit content, you're sort of drawing attention to like maybe stuff that doesn't get discussed a lot, like, because as you said, right, like there's a lot of political correctness in the States, right? And even much nowadays, right? Like people cannot talk about certain things, right? Which was, you know, kind of why I invited, you know, Vanessa to come here,
of course.
you know, last month and talk about, I mean, and I was like, you know, can you talk about your rape jokes project in particular? Because I think that's really like something that makes people uncomfortable, in the sense that like a lot of us, I don't know, I know, but a lot of us just think that we're really good people, you know, and you know, we're and this is something you pick on in the No Lo Vi Venir project, right? Is this idea of like, you know, being taken aback by, you know, something that you didn't see it coming, and you're not sure of what you think, and you're sort of like always, and that's sort of also the point that you're making in the video, right? That you show, right? Like kind of not knowing what you think, right? And that's actually a good thing, right? Because most militant, and that's why I was sort of like, when we were exchanging emails, I mean, just so people know, I was telling Felipe that, you know, when I say, you know, politics in what I usually want people to do in this series, right? It's not really, because you see that I don't invite like militant you know. I'm not inviting like
Exactly.
some person with like a manifesto or something like that, right? That's really not super interesting, because that kind of and that might, I mean, that's actually a good segue into another topic that you, I think, also grapple with in the No Love Even project, right? Which is like that, like how do you reach people, right? Like how do you reach the how do you reach people so that your writing actually has an effect on anything at all, right? Like as you said, right? I mean, sort of backtrack. If you're sort of writing in a manifesto sort of register, and you kind of already know what you want to say, and you know who you're saying it to, that's kind of boring, right? It's kind of boring, and it's not going to probably accomplish much, because you're sort of preaching to the
Yeah,
converted, right? It's sort
exactly.
of
Well, and that is why I published those letters in a right-wing
absolute.
newspaper, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, yeah. You know, like talking about the impact of what you can do is for me. It has been really an issue, because I want so much to be famous and to appear on TV. I would do everything that I need to, but I haven't made it yet. Uh, but you know, I like very much to play publicly, and I also have like in my social media, I have like a character which is called El Poeta Felipe Cussen, the poet Felipe Cussen, and I take like photos of being inspired, and very like playing with the ridiculous idea of being a poet. And I can show you, because I made a set of postcards with that. I will show you, because I think this has to do with let me see what they are. Here it is. So as I said, I like very much to joke with that, because I don't know. I I always consider that it's very ridicule to be a poet nowadays, especially. Uh, some people get angry when I say that, but I don't know. It's the way I think, and also and also I'm a very bourgeois person. I have a work at the university. I have been really privileged. I mean, if compared, yeah, I have seen it. Yeah. I'm getting thirsty, and and so and I cannot talk from the place of lots of people that are really suffering and that are really having problems. So something that I'm really very preoccupied is not to replace the voice of anyone. I mean that's for me like I'm not very ethical at my writing projects, but in that thing I try to be ethical. Like I don't want to speak from anyone, just for myself. And here I will show you the photos. Let me see. Well, for example, here I say that poet Felipe Cussen is, I don't know, he disponible, o sea, dispuesto. He can deal. He can have any sacrifice in the name of for poetry's sake. Like,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
but some of them, let me see.
Oh, this is a
Here,
great one, man.
yeah. Here is I'm voting for an election. Yeah, and for example, here I'm showing my compromise against colonialism, and I'm wearing a poncho, a Bolivian poncho, which is beautiful, very traditional wearing. There's also this statue of whatever Spanish conqueror, but there's also a plastic glass. I don't know, someone put it there. And here I'm reflecting about Latin American identity. I don't know, like, but like, this is kind of a joke. So this is the thing, this is like my political, my public persona in social media, and at the same time, this is the guy that writes letters to the newspaper. So everything is mixed in, I don't know, with some irony and ambiguity. So that is why my political opinions should not be taken seriously or too much seriously. But also, that is why I don't want to use the poem to explain something to anyone, or to express my opinion or to convince someone. It's more like showing, and you do what you want with that. And that is why some more polemic projects, well, you can discuss a lot of all those projects by Kenneth Goldsmith and Vanessa Place. In fact, the Michael Brown's Autopsy for me is not even an interesting work in itself. I mean, I mean, Seven American Deaths and Disasters for me is a wonderful political book. If you think of what Kenneth Goldsmith has been doing for me, that's a great book. But what happened with the Vanessa Place case, I was all the time thinking, why people are so stupid. I mean, why they want to, why do we have to explain everything and this is very American, like say something about the disclosure or the advertising that please don't feel offended by this. So I don't know, for me, that was not, of course it was polemical and it was the aim that probably she had with that, but I don't know why people have, why do we have to explain everything about what we do in the poems, and also why do people want to read poetry only about what they already think. I mean, that is for me, it's really a huge problem. I mean, I already know what I think of something, and I don't need a poet to explain me if I should think this way or this other way. So that is very paternalistic, a very paternalistic point of view, and also very paternalistic from the readers that expect that. So yeah, that's a problem for me. And well, and of course, if you want to talk about cancellation and all that, I always say, I mean, you can cancel a poet, of course, and you don't have to invite someone that you don't like, or someone that you think that is doing something wrong. Of course, I mean, I'm not gonna support any guy which I feel that it's making bad to someone. But at the same time, I don't want to cancel any work of art. I mean, we are already living under different ways of censorship or the influence of the market of what we consume or not. So I don't want another restriction to what I should be interested of reading or hearing or whatever. I mean, I don't want anything to prohibit me something else. And I think I'm an adult. I am mature enough to, I don't know, dance to a song by Michael Jackson and at the same time being able to say this guy should have been in jail. I mean, and also the work of Michael Jackson is also the work of lots of people, or Quincy Jones, or the musicians that played there, that I don't know, they are not guilty of what the horrible things that Michael Jackson did. So I don't know. Of course, I don't want to oblige anyone to listen to something they don't like or they don't feel comfortable. But for me, I want to hear or read as much as I can and as I like. So I don't want any more restrictions in that way.
I mean, we had I mean, just a very like slight detour to say that we sort of had an issue. I mean, and here we might disagree, Felipe. I don't know, like because like again, one of the guests that I had before Vanessa, right, was Lyndon, who was canceled, right, for some very like again, like, you know, yeah, he's saying some really problematic shit, you know, and we kind of told him that, right, like we sort of let him know in, you know, in the sort of questions we sent him in advance that, you know, hey, you know, we don't endorse like all this, you know, crap that you're kind of but that's no reason. I mean, to me, right, like that's my opinion, right? Like that's no reason to, cancel the guy or to like just, turn him into a pariah or anything
No,
like
no,
that.
no. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, what I thought that, for example, if I know something has done anything wrong, and I won't be comfortable with invited someone to a class, for example, or my students won't be comfortable, well, and maybe I can think over that. But I just forgot what I wanted to say. Well, please follow, and I will.
I mean, sort of just to sort of go back to the point I was trying to make about like conceptual writing and precision, right?
Yeah.
Like one thing that I think that so like a great example. I don't know if you know this project by Steve Zoltansky. Do you know Steve Zoltansky?
Yeah. In fact, I met him like lots of years ago in Buffalo, where I know you studied at Buffalo, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I know. I knew him in Buffalo in 2010, and we met again in 2018 at Leeds School of Arts with our friend Simon Morris, and we had to give a talk together. And I talked about this project trilogy, and he talked about his recent books, and we had a great conversation. It was amazing. Yeah.
No, it's just I'm sorry, and I'm just gonna allude to like a project of his that I really think like emblematizes this idea of
Yeah.
of like precision and
Yeah.
scrutiny, which is bribery. I don't know if you know that
Yeah.
project like he's trying to become like he's trying to become the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the concept.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
How do you do that, right? Like it's kind of difficult, right? Because everything you
Yeah.
do is sort of hijacked and like made into something romantic or mitigated by or insinuated by something else, etc. So, and what I think he's trying to get at in that particular project is I think in line with either what Vanessa is doing and what you were doing in explicit content, is like getting at the darker stuff that people actually not only think, but the whole like hypocrisy behind like a lot of liberal politics, right? Not because the issue with what I think conceptual writing does most effectively is maybe not like attacking the right or something like that. It's precisely attacking liberals, right?
Maybe, yeah.
It's like you think you're a good person, right? You think you know what you think.
Yeah.
But look at all of these, examples of things that you are not comfortable with. Like I don't know. I'm thinking about like one of the lines from your like explicit content project, right? Like you had like a middle-aged man fantasizes about a teenage girl, right? Like I'm like, yeah, I mean, even Vanessa, right? Like even I mean, we were talking about like the people that she defends, right? Like she's a lawyer, right? And even Vanessa was kind of saying like I mean, which kind of was surprising to me, but I understand her position. But she was saying, I think some people should be in jail. Though I'm not
exactly.
I'm not an abolitionist,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But like for sure, like her poetry, and I think what you're sort of going for here is also, or part of what you're going for is also like, that people just like weird shit, and that's okay. Right? It's fine for people to be weird, right? And to be, I don't know, mean and evil, right? And that's maybe
maybe I don't know if it's fine, but it's the reality. I mean, it's happening,
right? So exactly.
I also remember what I forgot to say, that there's also for me like a strategic problem, because if you lose so much energy like accusing a poet because one line in one poem is not so nice with whatever, please use your energy with the people that are really doing bad shit. Please concentrate and use your energy in what you should do. I mean, so yeah. And the other thing, what for example, for someone who lives in Chile, liberals, Democrats, or Republicans in the States are the same. I mean, there's no difference. The kind of damage that they have done with lots of countries in different parts of the world right now, with Palestine, of course, it's the same. So for me, like, a Democrat telling me that he's a good guy and so liberal and all that is, I'm not so sure. I mean, so yeah. Well, and that's kind of, I mean, like, I hate that political correctness. I mean, I try to behave, of course, the best in my everyday life, but this idea of like, well, it's acting like a censor. That's I hate censors in wherever they come from. I mean, and because it's like putting a wall between the work and the people that they should decide what to read or what to do with what they read. So yeah, that's very problematic. I hate that role of censors, be that they are liberals or they are Catholic or whatever. I mean, I don't like that.
No, like, no, and again, to kind of go back to what you were saying earlier about like people being like, super sure of what they believe in and whatnot, which is like, again, like experiment. I mean, sure, not every, not all poetry needs to be experimental, right? Like, but experimental poetry has that role of making you problematize, right? Like making you question your beliefs, right? And whether or not like what you think is the truth
What is the truth? Exactly.
Right. So I don't know. I think that, like, this is sort of like people keep bugging me like over here, right? Even Bruno, right? Like Bruno keeps, I know people that kind of like experimental stuff, like keep saying like, why didn't you invite someone from Portugal, right? Why are all the poets that you invite like from other places? Because and the thing I and this is like criticism of what you find here, even though like I know that you're like you gave it the example of Rui Torres, who of course an exception to that, right? But most of the poetry that you find here is kind of like that, right? Like you kind of like read something that is like left leaning or like, again, what you would probably and I would probably say is like just liberal, liberal mantra, right? Like of course we know that everyone know, like it's like what Vanessa was saying, like how come people would even would cross their minds that I'm for slavery? Like who would be like pro-slavery in the in the 21st century, right? You would need to be a real idiot, right? So
exactly.
And so, but what I feel that like a lot of the poetry over here that is mainstream and that is labeled like left-leaning or progressive and what it's just not taking a lot of risks, right? Not only aesthetically but also politically, in the sense that they're not really getting at the heart of the all these problems, right? So people like one of the let me say this, that one of the things that you, I believe, touched on also was this idea of like the backlash of the right, that then this is something, of course, that worries a lot of people, like including now in the United States, like the prospect that Trump's going to win again, right? And the reason for that is like, because liberals didn't really learn anything from the last decade or whatever, right? Precisely the and again, like the sort of recurrent problem that we have been discussing, I believe, in this series, right? Since I started running this, is like the disconnect between the left and working class people, right?
Yeah, and there are lots of, well, first of all, I hate this idea that but it's a very common idea. Maybe over there it's the same. Like, if you are a poet or if you are an artist, you have to be politically to the left. I mean, why? It's not an obligation. I mean, maybe it's the majority, but it's not an obligation. And there can be poets which have whatever ideology they like. Where I think you have to respect that, and you will see for yourself if that is problematic for you or not. I mean, I don't like very much the history of Russian Stalinism, for example, and Neruda was a Stalinist, and I don't know. So but also there's this thing that that, but for example, here we in September we had the 50th anniversary of the coup, so there was a lot of revival of everything related to that, and of course some poetry that was written related to that. And there's some magnificent poetry or novels or testimonies written during that period, and some of them from people that really survived the torture or the exile or things like that. Raúl Zurita, for example, was tortured, and he has some amazing books, very experimental also, talking about that. And that's wonderful, but at the same time, I'm in a really different place, so I cannot. No, I won't be comfortable talking about torture or things like that I haven't lived, that I was not related to, and it for me it would be like an usurpation of that place, and I want to be, as I said, very respectful with that. So. And of course, we're living in a different time, and I don't know. There's like this melancholic feeling of what happened in the dictatorship, because, as always, there was a lot of political and poetic intensity, different from our democracy days, which are maybe more boring. But I prefer to live in democracy than live in a dictatorship, of course. So. Yeah, I think that it's very difficult to find a place and a perspective to talk about politics, and that, I think that's why for me it was so difficult to find it, and when it happened, it was because the reality took place just where I live. I mean, it was not voluntary. It was like a reaction in my case. Maybe it was my first like really political moment in my life, because, as I said, I have lived in so lots of privilege during my life. So, but that, I don't know, there was something going on so big that I couldn't reject dealing with that, and that's when I had to take some options, and I don't know. In fact, I just well, I know I thought about it, but I will just show you, but I forget to. For me, this is my most political book, which I did, a conceptual book that I did during the pandemic, which is this one. This is the cover of the book because it's just a text, and the title is La realidad es simple, reality is simple, and it's just a recollection of the comments in the forum of one newspaper, the most extreme and fascist and that you can imagine. They are horrible. I mean, and I made a selection of the words of them and just put it together. And so this is and at the end I put where I took them from. I made the selection and nothing else.
Damn, I didn't see this one. I missed this
No,
one.
no, yeah. And it's it's like the worst material with which I have worked with. It was horrible. I was just taking and putting them, and well, nobody read it. So, but maybe a couple of people that read it. Carlos Sotoroman was one, and said it was similar to some of Vanessa Place's works and all that. But I was sure to put it that it was, of course, appropriated material, and I just put the selection and all that. But yeah, that was the thing. But something else that I forgot to talk about, that we were talking about the impact and how people would receive that or be influenced. The thing is that lots of people read my letters in the newspapers, but no one reads my poetry. But really, I have made all the efforts. I always organize book parties. I put every one of my poetry books is available for free download. You don't have to put your, I don't know, your email, nothing. But it's maybe it's that the easier you put it available, the less people are interested in. I don't know. It's very strange. So I'm known as a poet that wrote letters, but almost no one reads my poetry. That's the paradox of all this. So the influence of my poetry in the politics is zero.
I mean, it's absolutely. I think it's undeniable that
Yeah.
most of this stuff. If you, I mean, with if you know what I mean, like most of this material is mostly read by intellectuals and academics like us, right? Like so. Now, that's of course a problem, but at the same time, you would need, I guess, like I mean, I don't know about you, right? Like, but I have a hard time, believe me, I have a hard time even persuading my students, and they are already sort of interested in literature and poetry, right?
Yeah.
Unlike most people, right? So I have a lot of issues, or a hard time, like having them, like a Kenneth Goldsmith, and the guy read at the White House, right? I mean, I always use his White House reading, because he does like something really nice with the. I don't know if you remember that video. He does something really nice with the Whitman, and then Hart Crane, and his own poetry about the Brooklyn Bridge, right? And
yeah, I remember also his shoes at that reading, the shoes and the suit that he wore.
He's wearing like right, so curtains, but no, in true kind of Goldsmith fashion, but but the point is that even people that are already sort of primed to like literature don't really care about this stuff, right? And it's really hard to do the the groundwork. I mean, I find it really hard as a teacher, as an instructor, to like do the ground, like how do you make these kids like this stuff, right? Like, how do you make it relevant for them? So that's of course an issue. Like, how do you reach? I think it's of course understandable that you would have more of an impact on society through your letters.
Yeah, that's funny, but I mean, I really I don't want to complain, because first of all, I'm really privileged that my letters being published, and also I have had some of my stuff published in PDF only, but or sometimes printed in other countries. But most of the time, I just invent the name of a publishing house, and I put it and I just upload it. I mean, that's what I'm also I have not too much patience to deal with editors and all that. So for me, it's like, I thought of something, I do it, I put it online, and do what you like. So yeah. So but I mean, and also it's the spirit of the times. It's the technologies that we have available. So if I can do it, and let's do it. sometimes some people get mad that I only publish PDFs. I mean, I have published some proper books or academic books and all that, but in this kind of stuff, I don't want to put my money
Right.
to use my money for it, and or to wait too much time, and also there are like little jokes or very specific projects. So also I don't. It's not like an opus magnum, like.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I like to treat it that way also, like something very simple. Like I had this idea, I used this procedure, I I did it, and I publish, and it's online. So yeah.
No, I actually wanted, that's another thing I want to talk to you about, is the like one of the first things you said when you started your reading was you said, I published this in Gauss PDF, and I was like, oh yeah, that's great, because like that's a real, like, also a political,
Yeah,
it's a political approach to writing as well, sort of, right? In the sense
totally.
that you're not, like, we already sort of discussed that idea, and you make fun of that in your project, right? Like, in which you like, oh, what does a poet do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like kind of, I mean, it makes me think of your James Bond project as well.
Yeah.
Like, well, what does Felipe do in his free time? Oh yeah, he's staring into the horizon or whatever.
Exactly.
Super profound. But no, I mean, the what made me think of this actually was your plagiarism project, because like which is really cool. And I was like, but what, of course I was like, but what is he getting at? Like, because like, other than of course that that we're always kind of plagiarizing, we're always kind of recycling information, that sort of idea, right? But I was like, right, but then, like, if we think about this politically, right, like, what's the point of like defending, as Goldsmith does, right? Like, what's the point of defending and being supportive of reappropriation and recycling and remixing and all that, right? I believe, I mean, and you can maybe say something about this, is the communal aspect of writing, right? And the as you were sort of suggesting, right, like seeing also writing not as not really as this thing that you do that you do because you're a genius, right? But something you do because it's like a craft, right? It's like the craft of writing, and just putting something, as you said, just writing and just putting it out there, right? Like not waiting for it to become like fucking Ulysses or something like that,
Yeah, exactly.
and only valid.
And it has to do, as I said, like this approach of like moving the bricks, and also something that is very clear when you're a musician. I'm also a musician, and how do you say? I mean, I didn't invented the notes, I didn't invented the instrument, and I can be like the most imaginative musician ever, but everything that you're doing is just combining things that are already available. I mean, or even you could think of like the words already exist, the idea already exists. So the thing is what you do with them and how you play with them and how do you provoke something with them. So yeah, this also in that case I use it because and you're right, this is kind of also a political project in the sense that this plagiarism, what I did was I took the Shanghai ranking of best universities, and I took like the first 25 or 30, whatever. I hate those rankings. I mean, they are also very biased by an American way of thinking what a university should be, or how it is best or not. And also, I took the definitions of plagiarism that I found in the websites of those universities, like in the library or whatever. What do they say about the politics of plagiarism? Which, of course, I mean, I'm a professor at the university, and also I know I love appropriation and all that, but I know very clear what to decide when someone is plagiarizing an article or an essay. I mean, I have no doubts about that in those moments. But what I liked, it was a very tautological project, because what I did was putting those definitions in a plagiarism checker and see the percentage of plagiarism that they have. Of course, this is not a scientific project, because it's totally absurd to do this. But I was just playing with that idea that even the expression of the definition of plagiarism can be also a plagiarism in itself. So that was the idea. It has to do also with something that I'm very interested in my work at the university, like the politics of academic publishing, of scientific writing, which is something that I hate. I hate scientific journals and all that, and all the politics and that they, and the bad politics that they imply also, and this idea of a very competitive career as a professor, like trying to publish and publish and publish and all that. So yeah, well, that's for another discussion, of course, but it's also related to that situation, which is the same everywhere, I assume. So
oh yeah, like yeah, we could go into that, but let me do another, because I just want to take something you said and relate it to another project of yours that I found really cool, which was the don't judge a book by its cover project. We point I was making before, like, not all poetry has to be like Ulysses, or I mean, not that Ulysses is poetry, but not all poetry has to be like Ezra Pound's Cantus, right? Whatever, or like, it can be like, as you said, like something minor, right? Or that you
exactly,
or as you would say, like a passion project, let's say, right? Like, why not, right? It's something you're working on. It doesn't have to be like super polished, doesn't have to be a masterpiece, whatever, right? Like, and yet, like, what we think of as literature, or as as meaningful, is always sort of defined by the market, right? And how the context in which something is read, right? And in which something is placed, right? So I think that's kind of what you're going, I believe that's sort of what you were going for in this don't judge a book by its cover project, is that you don't really have to, as Goldsmith would say, right? Like, you don't have to read the book, right?
exactly,
you only need to know sometimes, right? You only need to know, or maybe not like we could discuss that, right? Like, but today, right? Like, form, right, or context is more important than content, right? Like, because content, as we were saying, content is most of the times kind of boring, right? Like, we kind of know that, like, what you're doing already, right?
Already know that before reading.
We know exactly, right? So I don't know, like, even a book, I mean, I was, again, like, to pick on Ulysses, right? Like, most people haven't read Ulysses, right? And yet it's like the number one novel of the 20th century, right? Or maybe the best novel ever written, right? And so it just becomes this fetishized object, right? That it's just a cover, it's just context. People don't even know what the book actually fucking means, so it's I don't know, just maybe if you can and I've lost track of what I'm saying, so if you wanna
No, but something very little that I wanted to say, it is just I write poetry or play music just for fun. I mean, at the end, I want to have fun, and that's my main interest. I'm very infantilistic in that sense, and that is why I love very much, like, talking about playing in Lego or things like that. Now I'm more, these last years I've been more interested in music and electronic music, and the idea of having a synthesizer and moving the knobs, you feel just like a 5 years old kid, and I love that. For me, it's like really having fun. And when I play these like books that you can think of like stupid jokes, like plagiarism or don't judge a book by its cover, it's just having fun with that. And and in that way, or in that sense, you can think of having fun and playing in an experimental way. I mean, that for me, that's the essence of experimental. Of asking every time, what if I do whatever, or what if, etc. And for me, that's the beginning of each project I do. It always starts with what if or what if. So and as I said elsewhere, also I don't think that I have something important to say, like or an important message. So the message comes after that or during the process. If you can find a message, for example, what we just talked about plagiarism, it was something that went, well, it's a little obvious, but it came after that. I mean, I just wanted to play what if I put the definition of plagiarism in a plagiarism detector. It's just like that. So
No. I mean, but just to link that to something you say that I found interesting. That's something you say in the No Love Venir project, right? Like you pick on these three new words that were added to the new constitution, right? The constitution that was
pleasure.
You say
pleasure,
rest,
osium.
leisure, and pleasure, right? Which were not in the constitution.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like
it was a beautiful constitution. I don't know why we didn't through.
No, I mean,
I mean, this happened like a little more than 1 year ago, and it feels like 10 years ago. It's so strange, but well. And now, I mean, right now I'm really nervous with what will happen on Sunday. So let's see. What,
hopefully it gets rejected, right? According to what you were saying. Right? Hopefully the Pinochet constitution.
Oh, it's so strange. I mean, it's the worst possible. Really strange, and everyone's tired also, and no one's to talk about it. So well, whatever. Let's see what we can do with that.
I don't know. I don't want to bug you like too much, and also I believe like we're almost reaching 2 hours. So I wanted to ask you like maybe a final.
I don't think no one else is hearing now. So
well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm not like again. I'm not doing this for my own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fun.
It's just for, as you said, for fun, and also because it's interesting. I mean, this is the kind of show that I would want to watch. That's kind of what I mean. I'm doing it for just for myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but anyway, like one of the not one like the kind of the last question I want to ask you is about this very interesting project that you have here. Like at the end of your like that, I mean, which was actually the first one I read. The Joy of Rain.
The Joy of Rain,
yeah, which I thought was like amazing. I mean,
great.
I don't know if I'm reading it, I mean, again, like it doesn't matter if I'm reading it right or whatever, right? But I will say this, right? Like I immediately compared it or thought of I don't know if you know it's a friend of mine that was at Buffalo as well, like Joey Algazin.
Yeah, of course. I know Joey and Holly. But by the way, just a quick note. I knew them in 2010 when I visited Buffalo. I was there with Steve McCaffrey and yeah. So and I knew them when they were studying the PhD, and I love their work. By the way, we had a good conversation last year with this conference organized by Bruno, in which Holly participated also.
Right.
And I remember talking with her about like this idea of, for example, I I think I'm part of this conceptual writing movement. I'm part of this group with Rob Fitterman, and I know some of these guys. But as I said, like I'm not thinking every time I write of what Kenneth Goldsmith has said or whatever. I mean, I had other reference, and of course I have read his work and very interested in all that. But for me, it's not like it's part of the landscape. And Holly said, well, it's great that you can think of in a more, I don't know, in a different way, because this has been a very dominant discussion, and you have in the States, and you had to like take sides and options and all that. And for me, all of this is so American. what is happening in the good and bad way. So I don't know, but
Oh yeah.
but yeah, well, and I just made an interview with Holly a couple of weeks ago, because we have an exhibition of blank books here in Chile, and she has this amazing Black
Black
Friday
Yeah.
book. So we exhibit that book also. So yeah, greetings to both of them, and they are so funny. I really like
Yeah, no.
the
Yeah, no. I mean, so again, like the reason I thought of like the reason I thought of Joey, why when I read the Joy of Rain, was because his new book is very like, again, like very particular, very interesting. I don't know if you've read it. It's a feeling called Heaven, right? It came out from Nightboat, and he actually read it here, and we talked about it here. And like, what's interesting about it is, like, number one, as you said, right, it's not what you would expect someone like Joey to write, because it's like it's this very serious, like very straightforward, sentimental, like sort of poem, right? And like part of it is, of course, like, and you could think about it as you were sort of suggesting, well, the sort of the conceptual movement sort of the group sort of fragmented, they all went their own ways, and they kind of stopped writing conceptual writing, conceptual poetry, because it's now a sort of a problem, right? And you might be persecuted or whatever, right, in the poetry community for it. So, and a lot of them, I believe, are doing that, right? Like, I don't know, Marie Buck, actually the first guest that I had here in the series, her book is also very different, right? It's not conceptual.
Yeah, and for me, like now, I think nowadays we can think of conceptual writing as a style or a set of procedures that you can use or not. In the same way, I can take something from concrete poetry, from Uli Po, or from whatever. I mean, it's available. You can use it, or not, and yeah.
But then, like, what I found interesting, like, again, like, I may be completely off the mark, right, like, about this, right, but what I found really cool about the project, right, it's that it's extremely, I mean, and I mean this in a good way, in a as a compliment. It's extremely repetitive, right? It's extremely like on the nose, right? Like, it's the joy of rain, right? It's what you would expect to get from a poem. It's so, I don't know if this is what you were going for. This is what I like took from it. Like, it's so cliche that it's actually not, right? It actually makes these images new again, and makes them pop, right? And makes them actually sound authentic and sincere and meaningful. So it's like, it's this weird, reversal in which you're just by writing.
I just wrote an article that should be published soon in the that's for me is a good example of scientific journal or academic publishing, the journal Matlit from our friends in Coimbra, which have this wonderful PhD program that I have been twice there, and I said I would have loved to study this program, which is really, really amazing, and there are some very good friends there. So Manuel, Osvaldo, greetings to all of those guys, and lots of guys interested in sound poetry. Amazing. Well, so I published an article in which I took 4 projects, art, plagiarism, self-portrait, and at the end, The Joy of Rain, that it's kind of a mix between academic research and creative project. So I analyzed what I did with all of them, and all of them use artificial intelligence in different ways. And this, The Joy of Rain, was written only with artificial intelligence. But I think that the use I did of it was very radical, because there's a lot of poems written with artificial intelligence that you receive the output and then you make corrections, you edit. It's like a collaboration. Or there's this amazing project by Charles Bernstein, which he just did, that for me is really great, and that is he fits the artificial intelligence with his own poems, and then he invented an artificial voice based on his. For me, that's a wonderful project also. But mine is different. I asked everything that appears in that book to the ChatGPT. I asked him, give me the name give me the title of a poetry book. Give me the title of the poems that should be in a book with the titles. Wrote the poems of each title. That was one part. And the other one that was funnier was that I asked the ChatGPT the prologues and introductions by with are so cliche, and I asked it to give me names of famous American poets to write them, and there are poets that I knew their names, but I really don't know if I guess one of them is not alive even. I mean, I feel really bad about I didn't know that. But the funny thing was that when I asked first, I asked, give me the name of an important poet that writes the introduction to my book, something like that, and said like Wordsworth or something like that. So I said, no, a contemporary poet. But I just put the first result that I had in everything. And what I liked most was my biography. I'm glad that you read my real biography, because if you read that biography, it's full. Or maybe that's where you were wrong with my age, because it says that I was born in 1986. I wish so, but I was born in 1974. Maybe that's what the. But it also says that my poetry is very influenced by the dictatorship and all that, which is something that I wouldn't agree that much, or it would be like irresponsible saying that. And yeah, so I just put it everything. The cover of the book was generated also by artificial intelligence, a very awful image, and I put it on lulu.com for print on demand. So yeah, I'm glad. I'm very glad of what you say about the book, because for me it was like the radicalization of the joke, like taking it one step forward. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I didn't. I mean, because I don't think you say it in the book that it's AI generated.
It appears only at the end in a very like in the colophon.
Got it.
And
I didn't
it's
get
very
it
hard
at
to
all.
find. Yeah.
Didn't get it. I thought like it was you, right? That like, you know, you just set out to do these really repetitive, cliche sort of poems that, you know, ironically become really cool, right? So I was like, oh, you know, and this maybe this is where, you know, mysticism comes in finally, where we go finally hit you know, the like the hypnotic or more like trance like qualities of this project, right? That
no, totally, yeah. I mean, well, that's another one of my interests, but yeah, this idea of repetition for me is really interesting, and Yeah, and you might get into a different state. It might be mystical, it might be not thinking of anything, it might be only enjoying the sound, whatever, but it's one of my interests. Yeah, of course. And yeah, I don't think, I mean, I just copied the text and put them. I haven't read too much. Well, I have read a couple of those poems in a poetry reading, but yeah, it was. But it's also was an exercise also, as I said, like what happens when you try to write a book with artificial intelligence. And of course, what I got was that for me, artificial intelligence in the way it's working now is like putting everything together, and the output is like the average of what everyone thinks about poetry, or what everything uh, considers that is poetic, which is having rhymes and talking about flowers and the rain and the landscape.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
They are very moralistic poems, but I think that what you liked about the repetitive is that is the order in which I did the project, which was very. I made it, half of it I was on a bus, like with my computer and trying ideas, and yeah, when I got the title, it was the first title. So and I didn't
yeah.
edit now.
I
And then
mean,
the titles of the poems, and that is why all the titles deal with the rain and whatever, and all the poems deal with the rain. So there are people that think of me, I don't know,
yeah,
as
it could be #1 on Amazon, right?
yeah,
You know
exactly,
what I mean?
exactly.
You know,
exactly.
it's like, I don't know whether it's Ruby
That is kind of this is
or
like a
something.
very
Yeah,
stupid project.
yeah. No, I mean, yeah. And so anyway, thanks Felipe for coming. And I mean,
Not to you, I really enjoyed and have so much fun. That's
yeah,
it.
no, yeah, why not? You know, it doesn't matter if like anyone, you know, is listening to us or not. Gives a damn, you know,
Yeah,
whatever.
and also I'd like to say that I love the glass that you use. I don't know if you're drinking
Oh, I'm
bourbon or
drinking whiskey.
whiskey.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Glencairn.
yeah, no,
Very
I
bourgeois.
have one of those at home. So now I will have a drink in your honor right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, and here we are, like again, like here I am, like talking about like you
Love
know,
it.
radicalism and the left,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, you know, how we should whatever, man. No, but
Well,
this is sort of your. I mean, again, that's sort of your. I mean, two things, right? Sort of your point to parody like this idea that we have of intellectuals of you know, well, you know, here I am like thinking about post-colonialism. My God, like I'm such a like, you know, such a smart and you know, sensitive guy or whatever, right? But at the same time, it's like it's just as I believe we've discussed a lot in the series, like, and also like to go back to the Zoltansky project that I mentioned, right? It's just very difficult today to actually act in a meaningful way politically, right? One thing that it does that I love in that project, right, is to even like criticize like just political protests and like rallies and whatnot, is like what is this thing really doing? It's not doing much, right? You say one thing,
yeah,
you say
well,
um, yeah,
it's really complex because I mean, if it weren't for the protest, nothing would have occurred. I mean, and there were people having a smaller protest for years and years, and none of the politicians took account of what they were saying. So that's the problem. I'm not. I don't like violence, but the problem is that they hear only when there's violence. That's a huge problem, and a really big problem. But
right.
yeah, also what you were saying, I mean, for me, like what I'm really happy of what has happened with my letters and kind of these interventions in social media is that some people feel relieved or smile for a while, like we're very preoccupied with the political situation, and to see it in a more funny way, it's like, well, yeah, it's okay. So I mean, that's also for me, it's the only useful thing I have done, I think, with all these projects. That at least that make people laugh for a while it's okay. So
Yeah,
and also, yeah, I mean, if you want to think like deeply political, for me, it's really more important what you do every day in your job with the people that you meet, and not the big manifestos that you write. I mean, that's where everything's happening. So yeah.
No, I mean, yeah. I do think that it's, and I mean, even you know, look at I mean, let me badmouth Charles Bernstein, since he it's one of the guys you mentioned that no, I mean, I love, of course, I love Charles. I've invited him for stuff. Did I've done stuff with him in the past, but for sure, like, one thing you can see about his trajectory, and I think you would agree with this, it's not something you would like say, well, no, is that he's I think he's tried over time to reach a greater number of people, right, with his writing, right, which, like, if you look at his writing from the 90s,
Yeah, from 70s,
it's like,
yeah.
wow, I mean, that's no one's gonna read that,
Oh, yeah.
not, but the stuff that he does now, I mean, it's more palatable. It's like people get it, right? I believe people most of the times, like, know what he's getting at, etc., right? And so I don't know. I mean, I feel, right, that there might be, this is my take. I mean, you don't have to agree, of course, we don't have to agree, but this is sort of my take. Like, I think there's maybe a middle ground to be found between like writing letters to the editor and like and writing really obscure stuff that only Bruno and I read, because we
Yeah, exactly.
avant-garde poet. I don't know. I feel that there might be like books that are maybe more eye-opening, that, and I'm not talking about just literature necessarily, about the philosophy, essays, and etc., like stuff that people write that reach a greater number of people, and that might change people's perspective. I don't know. So,
and also, I mean, I'm although I teach at the university and I have that place, I mean, for me, I like people to read and hear what they really like, and I mean, it's one of the few spaces in which today we still have a little of liberty. I think, like choosing like which music you want to hear, or choosing what book do you have to read. So I mean, we have lots of limitations from everywhere, and those are kinds of the little and the last private moments that we have, like reading a book or hearing a music or sharing it with someone else. So or writing or producing that music also is so personal, and so of course that there are things that I like, others that I hate, but it's not something that I would like to, I don't know, tell someone what to do, what to read, whatever. I mean, of course, if I like a book, I will say, oh, please read that book, but then you do what you want to do. So
as long as they don't listen to Michael Jackson, right? That's
yeah, exactly. That's
anyway. No, thanks, Felipe, for joining.
So much. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that we can meet when I come to.
We'll see.
I don't know when, but
oh yeah, no, really... I'm sure we'll see each other at a conference or whatever.
Yeah, great.
So,
well, let's keep in touch. Thanks very much.
Yeah, have a good day. Bye. Thank you. Bye. Goodbye.